Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to the representative of the European Commission, the Commissioner for Trade, Cecilia Malmström. And I've been told that while at the beginning we'll listen to a former teacher, and now we'll listen to a writer. Is that correct?
I've also been a lecturer, but yes, a few books, but that was a long time ago. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you for giving me this possibility to listen to some of the interventions here. It is my task to comment on the slightly leading questions, I would say, that you just voted upon, and also maybe a few comments on some of the questions that were put to me and Mr. Lange here. On the first issue on SMEs, of course we're never doing enough. We are, however, trying to focus, and that has been one of the main priorities the last years of the trade policy, to really focus on SMEs, because as you all know, and I don't have to convince anybody here, you are the backbone of our economy. A huge majority, 99% of all our companies in Europe are small or medium-sized companies, and we want to support you. We want to make sure that you, if you want, will take advantage of the trade agreements that we are negotiating. So we are including in many of our trade agreements, as from now, special chapters on SMEs. We are setting up special websites. We have special contact points was what I was looking for SMEs, and trying to engage with the different chambers nationally and the European chambers in order to spread the information about this. There's a lot of information on our websites, but of course there is also a need to make sure that that information goes to the SMEs, because a small company, a family company, does not have time to screen all the websites to look for this information. That is why we try to create one-stop shop where you could have all the information of what is the possibilities, the regulations, the procedures for the FTA with Canada, for instance. I was in Canada last week to discuss the one-year anniversary of Canada, and we agreed with the minister there that we would focus even more to try to reach out from our respective parts to the SMEs. Now, the Commission can do a lot, and what you are doing here is fantastic, but of course the main responsibility for this is the Member States, to reach out to their national companies to make sure that all the information is there in the different national channels, in the different languages, and to spread that information. The Commission can do a lot, and we can improve as always, but there is actually quite a lot happening already. On the other question, should the EU stand up to take more leadership? I'm glad you said yes to that question, otherwise it would make our difficult. I would say that we are in this. Mr. Lange outlined the difficulties in a world right now where several countries are taking unilateral action, are putting into question the rule-based trade that we have since many decades, and that has served us well, the WTO. So we are now taking the leadership, engaging with a lot of other countries to see, can we reform that rule book? Can we make sure that we write new rules and that we improve the ways that the WTO is working? And many countries are turning to the EU for leadership here. And we're also, when others say that trade wars are good, trade wars are easy to win, we say no, they are bad. But trade can be very good. They can be good for you, good for us. If they are done in a transparent, sustainable way, trade agreements can be really good for companies, for citizens, for consumers. And that is what we try to do via our different trade agreements, and also to reflect some of the concerns raised on the floor. Mr. Chairman, if I may, every trade agreement that we have, and the European Parliament is very vigilant on this, has a very ambitious chapter on trade and sustainable development. We cannot impose social standards to our partners, as we don't have unanimous standards in the European Union, but we can make sure that they respect international basic ILO environmental human rights standards, and we make sure that that is in the agreement. Shall we re-engage with the US on FTA? Well, I would have to say that TTIP, as we knew it, is not for revival for the moment. It is in the freezer. and it is not, the conditions are not there to resume these negotiations. What we have said and offered to the US is that we can, as a confidence building measure, try to identify a positive trade agenda. The US is a very important trading partner, of course, and there's a lot in common. So we could maybe look at a smaller tariff only agreement on industrial goods. We could take away tariffs here, and we can also in parallel, outside the trade agreement on a voluntary basis, see if we can address some of the standards on the regulatory side. Some of you raised this as well, NTB issues, which are so difficult for small and medium-sized companies to overcome. So we are trying to make a list to see where could we have some quite low-hanging fruits, building on some of the experience or the work we have done before with our American partners, to see if we can engage there. So this is still talks. We haven't started to negotiate anything. If we were, we would need a mandate from the member states, obviously. But we are talking with the US to see, is there some things we can do there to facilitate trade that would be a mutual benefits for for companies on both sides of the Atlantic. Now, what was the other question? Brexit. Well, I think we have shown, and member states have shown, a very strong unity in these negotiations. The European Union has not fallen in pieces and apart, as many predicted it would do after the referendum. We are still, or the chief negotiator, Monsieur Barnier, who will come here just in a little moment, I think, this afternoon, he will update you. He's doing his utmost with his team to make sure that we do have a exit agreement and a way forward with our British friends. We are not there yet, but I really hope that in some time we'll have greater clarity, and there we can start negotiating some kind of trade agreement, depending on the exit conditions we will have to see, so that we will not lose any of the important trade that we have with our friends in the UK. And there's a lot of other cooperation as well that needs to be included there. So hopefully that will not happen. Finally, on the implementation plan, every individual FTA cannot have an implementation plan on the European level. It's a bit difficult for the European Commission to say how exactly one specific trade agreement should be implemented in Slovenia or in Denmark or in Poland. That will have to be for national authorities to do. And some do that. Some do a very ambitious plan to do that. What we can do is to follow the implementation. And here again, we have said that this will really be the priority for the future as well, to look at how it is implemented, to take stock regularly to see what are the problems, what is working, what is not working, how can we remedy the problems, how can we engage with small companies if needed, and to make sure that we have these regular evaluations. There will be a new implementation report of all existing FTAs presented only in a couple of weeks. I'm honoured to come to INTA to present it, but it will of course be online as well, where we'll take stock of all the existing FTAs to see how they have been used, what are the problems, what are the advantages, how has this gone. And this is meant, of course, together with the market access database, where we are trying to identify protectionist measures, to be a tool for you as well to be used. I think that, Mr. Chairman, answered your voting questions, and it also included some of the issues raised by the honourable ladies and gentlemen in the audience. Just three very short comments. The Commission next week will adopt the EU-Vietnam agreement and then send the English version immediately to the Parliament and to the Council so they can start their preparations. You see? I hope, but that is not in my hands, that both the Council and the European Union will do whatever they can so that there can be a swift decision on this so it can enter into force. To my Irish friend asking about Mercosur, we are aware of the sensitivities in the beef sector, of course. What we are talking about is not even 1% of the total meat consumption in the European Union, so it's quite limited. We know the red lines there when we are negotiating with the Mercosur, but if we would get an agreement with them, I think this would open up fantastic possibilities to our companies in all the areas, in the agro-business, in public procurement, in services, and also the strategic importance of an agreement with these countries should not be underestimated as well. There are, finally, Mr. Chairman, a lot of funding that is available for small companies, for start-ups and others in the European Union. But I can tell that we have not done enough to promote the existence of these funds as well. We hope that, of course, we can have more investment in this in the coming multi-financial programme. Some of you could call upon your governments to be attentive to this when we are negotiating the next long-term budget. But there is, of course, limited, but there are possibilities to have assistance for small companies, especially for micro companies and start-ups within the European budget. So I think this answered all the questions. If I have not, I want to apologise. But thank you again for this possibility to listen and to have this dialogue with you.
Thank you very much. And building on the reaction of the audience at the announcement that the next free trade agreement will be signed soon, I think that we all share your optimism, and we do believe that trade is a win-win situation for the entrepreneurs. Thank you very much. Please join me in applauding our two representatives. Thank you very much.